Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Jay. Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Jay, where we are building a hub for healing, transformation, and personal spiritual development. I have this wonderful job where I get to speak to people from all walks of life and professions who I feel have great insight and wisdom to share with you to help you with your healing journey, with your self-betterment, with your conscious evolution. And today we are speaking of a very heavy subject. I don't think there is a heavier subject than this. We're talking about child sexual abuse. And although it is a heavy subject, like I've said 100 times, I feel it's of great importance and value to speak about this subject, especially with people that have had lived experience with it and are making inroads with the healing. And so I've got my friend on the show today, Miss Susan. Hello, official welcome to you.
Hello, thank you.
Thanks for being here, Susan. And Susan has experienced child sexual abuse, which I'm going to refer to as CSA during the show because it's easier to say. And I'm really grateful for you to be here, Susan, to just dive in and share about your experience, specifically with the healing of that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Feels like a real privilege to be here on this platform sharing this with people, offering my own journey in the hope that perhaps somebody might get some value out of that.
Yeah, and we were just talking as well before the show about that. You just don't know who's going to see this and how it can help someone out there. Let's dive into it, Susan, straight up. I'm curious to know when you remembered the abuse and how did that all come about? Were you remembering, or did you always know it was there, or was there a moment where you were just like, oh my goodness, this happened? Was it a slow experience where it started trickling in? What was that? And for you, what was your experience?
No, I didn't remember. It was somewhere in my I think really early 20s when I started to do the real sort of seeking, and I was really seeking healing, not really fully understanding why. Largely, a lot of it was to do with what was stirring up inside of me, but feeling like there was something that didn't feel quite whole, or that there was something that I needed to do. So there was this kind of like searching, seeking kind of thing that was happening. And within all of that, finding, sort of getting caught up in the new age, of course, because that was really only what was that's only really sort of what's out there. And coming across different modalities of healing, getting kind of really involved in those, having experiences where that would come up in the healings, and having healers either diminish it because I think now upon reflection, I could sort of see that largely they just didn't have the capacity for that.
Sure.
So they just kind of diminished it. And the only time that I ever really had some kind of validation for the experience was I did something called experiential astrology, which is actually quite interesting. You stand in this circle with all the signs around you. Anyway, there was this moment there where I really gravitated to this particular archetype that had like a veil across its eyes, like something was hidden. And I stood there and I just had this this is what happened.
That's when it all came back. The specific event or events, Susan, is that, or just the abuse has happened?
Yeah. And it wasn't really until I kind of started unpacking that a little bit and talking to people, a few friends around me, and just trying to understand what that could have been about. And but I think I knew. I think we always know. It's just kind of gets shrouded in all protections and coping mechanisms, and avoidances and denials and pushing away and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of really where it kicked off. But then I guess I did go back into denial after all of that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So uncovered it, and then what was your experience with that, Susan? Was it getting too much, so you started avoiding denying, or did you start doubting that it happened? What was your experience?
I think probably all of those things. And now when I reflect back on it, having, the hindsight to do so, I wasn't equipped to actually to deal with that. I didn't
Yeah,
have enough on board to actually delve into that wounding. I just probably would have really kind of lost myself. I already did, like, in a way. I felt really destabilized by the whole thing, and it was like, no, you should just put that somewhere in there. It was the narrative was, oh, you just need to put that to bed again. But as we know, that's the kind of collective narrative of, yeah, let's just pretend, that didn't happen. Let's put that back to bed. And it's part of the grooming, that never really happened. That kind of,
yeah.
yeah.
Was there any support around at that time? I know you said you talked to a few friends and stuff. Was there any support, or do you feel that not having the support around maybe influenced the tucking it away again, and not, putting it to bed, as you said?
Yeah, because I think there was part of me that was attempting to reach out to investigate, but I kept coming up with this, door sort of slammed. And obviously I was just looking in the wrong areas and placing my, just going with what I knew and with all that Susan had in those moments, but then realizing afterwards that, I was really looking in the wrong areas, and I was looking at people that really weren't able to support that kind of thing. But I didn't really know what I was dealing with in those moments. So I did my best,
Sure,
but yeah.
sure. And I heard you say with some of the healers that they just weren't equipped, and I feel that there is a bit about that. There is a bit of that out there with practitioners, healers, facilitators that aren't equipped to deal with such a subject for whatever reason, and that's okay. But there's in my own journey, I'm exploring now and uncovering that there are wonderful people out there who are really experienced in helping with the healing with this sort of stuff. If you look, there is lots of people out there.
Mm.
How did you and how does one continue on after this sort of event? How do you function afterwards? Because it's such a betrayal, it's such a violation. So I'm just wondering, how do you keep going?
With a shit ton of coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you feel to share, what were some of those? Because I know a lot of people fall into drugs or alcohol, or just, losing themselves in whatever addiction
Yeah.
of some sort. Did you feel to touch on any of that, Susan?
Yeah. I mean, I had some addictive experiences in my late teens. Um, and, I did dabble into the drug thing just really as an escapism. Um, and I guess uh, the eating was a really
Hmm.
large component for me as a
Hmm.
child, and then even now into adulthood. It's like
Hmm.
just eating disorders, and um, using food as a, emotionally coping type thing, but also trying to fill this kind of emptiness that was going on inside. Yeah, there was so many, to be honest. It's like, where do I start on all of that? But I literally felt like something was truly broken in me, and that I was an emotional basket case, and that I was just too much. Like, for me, I was too much, and that kind of reflected out that I was too much for others. And that has been this ongoing narrative that I've unpacked a lot throughout my own healing journey with this. And, I had a wonderful, wonderful therapist that I just can't be grateful enough for.
Yeah.
And yeah, and she just kept reminding me that, yeah, it was too much for that
Mm.
part.
Yeah. As you were sharing there, Susan, I was like, what shifted? Because I heard you talking about the struggles with it and the shit ton of coping mechanisms and feeling like you're too much. What has shifted for you? What are some of the things that have really shifted for you with the healing in recent times? Because I know that you are making inroads with the healing and come a long way with that. And you spoke of your therapist, which is Claire. Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah,
Who's,
yeah.
we've had Claire on the show, and I'll put her details in the description. She's wonderful. Um, I just wanted to grab that and what's shifted for you recently? What are some of the main things that have helped you recently with all of this?
Oh, I think reparenting of self and offering parenting to those parts that didn't really get any, in the way that they needed to be parented.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the main one was to just kind of really break that. Um, when I say break, I don't mean like in a will kind of like, "Oh, I'm gonna like power over you." And although I did do a lot of that, it was like I had to just kind of plow through stuff to
Mm-hmm.
keep on surviving. It's like, just get it done, just get it done. There was this kind of real sort of power over,
Yeah.
um, dynamic that was within me to just stay afloat, keep moving
Yeah.
forward, keep living, keep trying to be a part of society. Um, yeah, so staying with self
Mm-hmm.
and not disassociating, like, to break that cycle, and to just stay with the feelings that are presenting was probably the biggest breakthrough, really, because I mean that's it sounds so simple, but it is such an enormous task, especially when there is still incredible depth of wounding, and feelings of constant overwhelm that would just kind of kick me back out into disassociating, and then I would space off and lose time. And so having this, what Claire called my emergency toolkit, which was to kind of just really grab myself. And I had a lot of strategies, like if I was really in a big trigger, um, to just, roots really deeply into the ground, and looking around the room, naming things that are in the room, and to look at the door, like it's closed right now. I'm totally safe. And lots of like coaching myself
Mm.
through those really triggered moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that answer the question?
It really does. And
Yeah.
when you were sharing that about staying, and you said it was simple, and I was like, that would be such a difficult task with that amount of trauma that I can imagine. It's not my experience, CSA. I haven't had that experience, but just empathically, I can just feel, well, that would be incredibly enormous to actually stay with. those parts that had that experience and all the trauma that's coming up from that, that would be a huge skill to develop, and it would take an enormous amount of courage, but also acceptance, I'm sure, and self-love as well with the
Yeah.
reparenting. There's a lot in it, and love what you're sharing there, Susan, and I feel that it could be helpful for people out there. Yeah, so that's great. Claire's wonderful. And is there anything else you wanted to add with the healing components and wins you've had with that? Things, techniques that have helped you or are helping you currently?
Yeah, I feel to share that, because I sit here and talk about it, and I don't want it to sound like it's not that it's so simple and so easily done, because it really isn't. And it does take a lot of courage, and it took, initially I wasn't able to do any of that for myself. It required Claire, the therapist, to be able to hold that for me,
Mm.
so that when I was totally destabilized, because I really was, and I felt like I was traversing my own hell in moments there,
You
and
were.
yeah, for
Yeah.
her to just hold that on
Yeah.
behalf of, and to
Mm.
model that for me,
Hmm.
so that I could get to a place. It took a long time. It's not like a quick overnight sensation. Literally, like um, where I could get to the place where, like, oh, actually, I got this, and
Mm.
I'll mess up, still, obviously, and but it's like, well, I can do this for myself now, and I've got this, and just so much gratitude for the holding in those moments, because I mean that would just be a challenge for any therapist, I'm sure, to hold that much wounding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing there is just how important having good support is when it
Yeah.
comes to healing generally, but of course with such traumatic events, just really having competent support in place and finding your person or your group that really resonates with your heart and genuinely want to nurture your heart and your healing and your growth. I feel it'll be, I don't want to say impossible, but it'd be very difficult to do it yourself. And I know Claire quite well, and I work with her professionally, and she has been on the show, like we said, and she's coming from that place of lived experience, but she has all the training as well, which is a wonderful combination.
Yeah.
So she really is able to hold and has spoken of that process of holding for others while they learn to do it themselves.
Yeah. And that is the key combination, the lived experience, and then um the education.
Yeah, yeah, the
um
professional
yeah, the
qualifications.
professional
Yeah,
qualifications and the education, particularly, even you could go even further and say, well, specializing in that area.
yeah, absolutely.
um
Yeah,
yeah, because sort of cycling back to what we spoke about a moment ago, there are many out there that um, decree to be able to, uh, you know, work through trauma with
yeah,
people.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and it's so deeply nuanced, and it's so easy to re-traumatize if we don't actually
yeah,
have, yeah,
yeah.
the
Good
adequate
point.
skills.
Yeah, yeah, and I've heard, and again, Claire's coming into this quite a bit. She spoke on our podcast about that secondary trauma that can
Yeah,
happen either with not being believed, or if you have a difficult experience with a therapist, it can create this secondary or third trauma on top of it, which can really make it difficult to get back in. So it's just like those secondary traumas are like doors shutting on it, and you're distancing even further from that. Yeah, so
Yeah.
difficult and so really important, I guess, to be discerning and to not just go with the first person or group that you land with, but really feel into your heart and
Yeah.
or whatever works for you with regards to knowing what's right for you is to really find the right one to work with through this stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Nice one, Susan. Well, I'm glad you're having a win with it and nice to be sharing how some of the techniques that have helped you. I want to ask you a little bit about the experience itself, because my understanding is that often the perpetrator will project all of their guilt and their shame onto the victim, and they'll also quite heavily make it about the victim, like it's their fault. And just wondering, was that some of your experience?
Um, Tricky for me to fully answer that with a definite, just because I still don't have full um, remembering
Mm-hmm.
of uh, what happened. For me, it's very much a feeling and a knowing, like a deep knowing. I think that
Mm-hmm.
deep knowing has always been there. But yes, the projections, and that's all part of the grooming that happens. Um, yeah, it's such a tricky thing. It's like that's where we have to start separating um, and recognizing where we actually start to have choices in this. I think in the
Mm-hmm.
past, for me, it was I couldn't even see that there was a choice. There was this pattern that kept playing out over and over and over and over of passivity, rolling
Yep.
over, just letting whatever happened to me happen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I guess and if I'm completely honest, there's still elements of that pattern that still do play out, but I'm much more conscious of it now, and I have particular red flags, particular things that happen um, that alert me, or particular narratives that start internally that actually alert me, and they're my red flags of like, oh, I'm starting to say that narrative. Oh, there's something happening here inside of me that I really need to explore. It's like, oh,
Mm.
yeah, does that
Makes
um,
sense. Yeah.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
guess that's another strategy if I want to kind of divert back there. But yeah,
Yeah.
in terms of the projections, definitely a thing, um, sadly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was just curious, Susan, because I've spoken to a few people about this, and they arrived often at a point where they realized that the guilt and shame that had been haunting them for so long wasn't actually theirs. A lot of it was stemming from the perpetrator of the act, and
Yeah.
it's just so messy. The whole thing for me when I'm feeling into it, it's just so messy, and just the whole violation and how one would deal with that. Also that whole it's your fault. And I've spoken to people about this, and they genuinely, for a long time, they remembered the abuse, and they were like, "That's my fault. I made them do that," or something along those lines, which must be
Yeah.
horrible for people to experience that.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely say that um, that was a narrative that I carried into every aspect of my life, that it's my fault, that it's always my fault, and I have to take the responsibility and the blame. Um, and it didn't matter what it was. It was just, yeah, it was just always my fault.
I'm glad you shared that. You don't have full remembering, but there's a
Mm,
knowing, and you're really clear on that. Because I've also, just in my research of this, I've seen people talk about that they don't remember it really clearly, and that can cause some doubt in them. And then,
yeah.
that can be this whole challenge of doubting that it actually happened, but the body is saying, it did happen, but I don't remember it or see it clearly. So it was just wonderful to hear you share there, Susan, where you're like, but there's this knowing. It's like I know it happened, even though I
Yeah.
don't have memory of the exact details and event itself.
Yeah. And I that becomes like a bit of a head twist in itself. You know, we can start gaslighting ourselves, which kind of perpetuates more of the shame. It
Yeah,
becomes this kind of like thing like this where everything's kind of feeding each other. We have to kind of disentangle all of that and, well, what's the truth in this? What's really happening here? Yeah.
mm. Yeah, it would be, it would be difficult because, and I like how you did this because it does feel like it could just get so messy and it would be hard to know what's up, what's down, what's actually true. But I guess, and share your experience with this, it would come down to, okay, what can I do in this moment? What's happening for me right now in this moment? And how can I deal with the feelings or whatever's happening right now?
Yeah. And I've got that wisdom on board now, but
Yeah, yeah,
before, no, it just wasn't. It just wasn't there. I would just be running all my patterns. All
yeah,
the narratives would kick in, and then I was off. You know, I'd be like jumping out of the body, and then that has its own effects of not being present to self, and you know, a number of different things can kind of happen as a byproduct of just that alone, the lack of presence.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and making choices from that disassociated space can, yeah, that, yeah, has its own issues. Yeah,
Yeah, and I did lots of that. Lots of choices that were based on survival, lots of choices that were based on disempowerment, lots of choices that were based on um, just fear, all different types of fear, really.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally understandable. Absolutely. Um, a lot of people struggle with sex, Susan, and I'm wondering your relationship with your body and sex, how that has been affected. I mean, I've spoken to some people where actually they use sex as part of a coping strategy after these events as well. So wondering about your relationship with your body, with sex, if you felt to talk about that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think the whole thing is just such a violation on so many levels. Um, you know, and I've read that victims don't feel safe in their bodies, and that was certainly my experience, and that's what the, you know, a lot of the dissociation was about. Um, and yeah, I had promiscuous tendencies when I was younger,
Yep.
and a lot of that was um, coming from this deep place of I just want someone to love me, and love equated to sex because of the wounding. To love meant to, well, you had to,
Ah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
you had to have sex with that person because that's what it meant to love. Yeah,
Yeah, it just twists
yeah,
everything and understandably, yeah.
yeah. And sadly, you know, to twist what love actually is,
Yeah,
so you disconnect from what love really is,
yeah.
which is sad, deeply sad.
And if that's happened, if it is CSA when it's happened as a child, when you're in such a vulnerable state, when you're growing and formulating, then you just, you take that with you and it would just be ingrained somewhat unconsciously that that's what it is because the event happened at such a young age. So that would be difficult. I could
Yeah,
imagine because you end up just growing up with these things installed, not
yes,
necessarily remembering that they were installed because of this horrendous thing that's happened that was fucked up and, shouldn't have happened and is wrong. But you've just got these patterns.
yeah.
So
And I have to say yes to sex even if I don't want to. You know, there was
as
that as
well.
well. You know,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So there's lots, and in relation to the body, it's like for me, for so long it was body. What body? You know, I was so like far away, so far removed from my body.
Yeah.
That it was like, oh, body, like, oh, that's
Yeah.
right, I've got one. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was, yeah.
There's I've read a lot as well, Susan, that um victims often will leave their body during the event, and that's, that just becomes part of their safety, is to leave the body, and then that is a habit or a something that continues on through their life, and that's the dissociating, I guess. But they speak of that, of like, oh, if it's happened multiple times or once, even, that it's just, or get out because I'm safer up here, out of the body.
Yeah. And massively challenging to retrain that, because
Yep.
that is the staying. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is what the staying actually is. It's like, and I would have to, it's like, I'm just going to stay with this. We're just going to stay for 2 minutes,
Hmm.
2 minutes today.
Hmm.
And then it would be like 2 minutes, and then it's like, oh, maybe we can stay just an extra 30 seconds. How does that feel if we
Hmm.
just stayed an extra 30 seconds? And, tomorrow maybe we'll do 3 minutes. So there was a lot of like, it's okay. We're just going to run with the baby steps. We're just going to do this really gently, really
Hmm.
softly, and we're going to break down these. But obviously I wasn't saying we're going to break down these patterns, but in my mind it's like, we're breaking down these patterns, and this is how we're doing it, with like absolute gentleness and softness, and the talking through the baby steps, constantly talking through. Yeah, and also for me it was like, if I was a bit masterful at disassociating. It was like, I'm a master at disassociating. Just to be masterful at anything. It's like, but if I can, but there was some kind of reorientation in that. It's like, well, if you can be so great at that, then you can also be so
The
great at
other.
coming back. Like,
Nice. Nice
yeah,
reframing.
yeah,
Yeah. It just felt so loving and kind when you were sharing about how you're coaching yourself and reparenting those parts to come back
yeah,
in. And I just feel to say as well, which you touched on, is that how difficult that it is and has been, and not minimalizing any of this, because it's a freaking challenge, like one of the biggest challenges you could undergo when it comes to healing. So just wanted to put that in there. And you spoke of that, of yeah, you're having some, it's taken time to get to where you're at now, and still work to do. And I think some people can get disheartened. That's why I'm sharing that as well, Susan. It's like, will this ever end? But
yeah,
it's like, it is such a big trauma, and we've used the word violation a bit tonight, and it is that. So I'm sure it wouldn't just happen overnight for most people. Oh yeah, that's happened, that's done, I'm good. It's gonna take as long as it takes, depending on the event and how, just depending on a lot of things. It's gonna take as long as it takes. And it just felt really kind and loving, and hearing you talking there, sharing about how you're nurturing yourself through that to stay more with the feelings that are presenting.
yeah. And I guess I think I had 2 years of therapy.
Mm.
So just to give a little bit of context there. And
Mm-hmm.
it did actually take 6 months of solid, weekly therapy before I got to a place of even accepting
Mm.
that it happened.
Mm.
Um, but then, that's kind of when the real work can start to take place, when it's like full acceptance.
Mm.
Yes, this actually happened. And now we can really work with it. Like something that has to happen in order for, well, in any kind of healing work, really, the acceptance is the key there. And there was so much gaslighting, and there was a lot of programming, and there was a lot of doubting. And because a lot of that was because I didn't fully remember.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, oh, am I sure about this? And yeah, and then just elements of then sort of looking back at the relationship with that person and going, oh yeah, I actually see that in a completely different way now.
See what the relationship with that person and
Yeah,
yeah, sure.
yeah.
If
I
you add the sexual abuse and then look at you see it in a different light.
Yeah. And I'm
Gotcha.
able to see the grooming, and I'm able, like, over the, even, into sort of adult, and the power over, and the will, the dominant will stuff, um and I guess, yeah, all of that just kind of opened up, and it's like, now I fully understand why every relationship that I had was abusive on some level.
Mm.
Whether it be physically abuse, emotional abuse, they were all abusive,
Mm-hmm.
and controlling, gaslighting, just all of those patterns. And that's so common for, you see with women that are involved in domestic violence. I'm pretty certain that the statistics are, well, I know they are extremely high. Most of them have had that kind of encounter in their lives, and it's, whether they're conscious of it or unconscious of it, the pattern continues to play out in
Yeah.
in these abusive relationships that they keep getting entangled in, or the women
Yeah.
keep getting in. Yeah,
Yeah, it comes back to what I was sharing before with the victim projecting so much onto them as a young one, and then just having these patterns and these behaviors
yeah,
being installed at such a young age, and then carrying that through and not really knowing why.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
I was gonna ask you about romantic relationships, which you just sounds like you just spoke on that a bit. Most of your relationships, things like that have been playing out.
yeah. Always attracting controlling partners, and it's also useful for me to mention that a large part of the wounding that occurs with this kind of, abuse, is that our discernment just kind of gets thrown out the door, or flushed away down the toilet, because something really messes inside of our heads, where we're like, oh, but I know that that's wrong. Oh, but I'm told that it's not. And so it kind of really starts to disconnect things.
Mm,
And for me, it was my discernment that, like, oh, okay, well, I must be wrong. Like,
mm,
I must have it wrong. And therefore, any time that I would go, oh, this just doesn't feel right. Like, if I was with a partner, it'd be like, oh, but no, you're always, no, that's not true. Um, and it's only been now that I've started to really get the healing happening, where the discernment is starting to come back on, and I can see things a lot clearer. I can see my own bullshit and other people's bullshit a lot better. I'm not saying that I'm like great, like super amazing at it, but I'm much better than I was. I can see the games and people's, like, projections that they want to throw at me, and I'm just
mm.
much better at seeing that kind of stuff. And um yeah, I guess these are all the byproducts of actually having the courage to face all of this stuff.
Yeah.
um yeah,
It just feels so horrible, that experience of not trusting yourself
yeah,
because of and just doubting yourself and thinking that you're the one that's wrong all the time. Yeah, that just feels really horrible. Be hard to deal with that one. Yeah.
yeah, it was. And then we start to just um negate self, and then, abandon and reject self, which is, another wounding on top of the existing wounding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Good on you for just keeping on going, Susan, as well. It feels to mention that a lot don't, and they do get the coping mechanisms turn to self-destruction, where it gets to a point where people don't return from it. So good on you for just
yeah,
whatever you were doing there to just keep on going. Good on you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I want to say as well that it never feels like a finite journey with that kind of thing. It's something that, yeah, I feel like I've got to a particular point with it, but it's always in my awareness, always. And like I said, there's particular things that, like little red flags that I've set up for myself.
Yep.
That, if this is happening, then, it's like we need to be alert kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never, we can let go of everything that has happened. I truly do believe that.
Yeah.
But it's also really useful to just stay fully aware of all of the patterns and coping mechanisms that were in place as a result of all of that, just in case
Sure.
anything kicks up again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you've developed this self-awareness. Like
Yeah.
you've really honed your self-awareness and your awareness of your inner world and even the external world. So as horrible as it is, it sounds like there's all these skills that you've got on board
Yeah.
that you've developed from it, which even saying that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense what you're saying. You have spoken on the staying and how challenging that has been. Would you say that that's been the most challenging part of the healing journey?
Yeah. The
Yeah.
and the facing it.
Mm.
It's like, okay, I'm going to face this. I must face this. I have to face this. Um, and I think there were elements of me that kind of, I think I just knew as well. It was like, I can't actually, this needs to be dealt with.
Mm.
Um, yeah, something inside of me was just like, let's do this. Let's actually face this stuff.
Was there a specific moment, Susan, where that happened, or was that incrementally just happening?
Um, yeah, I did have a moment.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I was actually about to put myself and my child into a dangerous position, and I don't I don't feel to go into the details, but
Sure.
um, that moment was the actual. It's like, wow, okay. I felt like I was a bit blindsided.
Uh-huh.
Uh, yeah, and I think I acknowledged in that moment that how blindsided I had
Mm.
actually been, and how, this type of wounding has its hooks in so many
Mm.
different areas of your life, and can just come in from left field and knock you on your ass, or blindside you,
Yeah,
to
literally. Yeah.
where people can come back into your life. And yeah, that was my moment of like, come on, girl, you got to get this together now, because um that you're also responsible for somebody else too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your
Yeah.
first steps from there in the facing it?
Yeah, so finding the therapist, and then um I remember my very first session. I don't think I stopped crying. Literally, like, sobbing. I think it was the first time that I fully unpacked all the story, that even all the after bits that
Yeah.
sort of, all the threads that came as an aftermath.
Yeah.
Um, and for that to just be received and held while I just fell apart. and allowed myself to fall apart. Yeah. Just, yeah, I keep saying it, but yeah, Claire, it's just such an amazing human being. Like, yeah, just
Yeah.
amazing. I would love to be, you know, as you know, I'm doing a Bachelor of Counselling right now. I'd love to be able to have that experience, hold that for
Mm.
somebody else, to pay that forward
Mm.
and give that experience to somebody else.
Yeah. How deeply healing just to be heard and held in a non-judgmental and loving and understanding space. Just that in
Yeah,
itself.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
fall apart, it's okay. Be unstable as you need. It's all part of it. And know
Mm.
that it's going to get better. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nice one. Was that some of the motivation for going to uni with the counselling?
Yeah. I actually, when I was living in the UK, I started a diploma of counselling, um, because I always wanted to work with women and violence. Um, there was this view of working with women in domestic violence initially, and then I came back to Australia for needed to come back quite swiftly and didn't really take it up. Then, well, I took up a diploma over here, but it was all online, and it just, there was like this real gap
Hmm.
in terms of like doing counselling online. It just
Yeah.
wasn't working for me. But
Yeah.
also, not really realizing at the time there was so much resistance from me, because I hadn't actually done any of this work at that stage. So anytime that I'd sort of had
Um,
my own domestic violence um, scenarios that had played out in my life, and so every time I kind of went into a particular area and with a view to moving forward in that, it would, like, I would hit up against these invisible walls that I had no idea what they were. And
yeah,
then I
sure.
would self-sabotage, and then I go, oh no, that's not for me, I'm not going to do that, you know. So I had a trail of unfinished things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It makes sense when you're sharing there. It's like, yeah, you're studying the counseling and the modules or whatever you're studying would, be deeply reflective and bringing up the stuff yet to be dealt with and all of that.
yeah. But I also had all my own limitations around not being smart enough and not being this enough and not being that enough, and that, you know, who was I to ever embark on a degree, kind of thing. But here I am, a long time later, with a lot more self-esteem. Yeah,
Good on you. I didn't
yeah,
know that part of the story, how you'd started it quite a while ago, and then it's kind of full circle. Now you're ready
yeah,
to. I don't know if you end up working in this field, but there is something, as my background is in addiction and recovery, and through that journey, I've just seen the brilliance of lived experience and people
mm,
with the professional qualifications. There's just something really special about that to join the two. So,
yeah,
wonderful if you end up working in that industry, whatever you do with it.
yeah. Well, that's the long-term goal, really. To work with others that have experienced sexual abuse. Um, However, you know, even, you know, sort of linking in back to what we were talking about with being inexperienced to be able to deal with this level of trauma, you know,
Yeah.
I asked the heads of the arts and sciences for the counselling at the uni about my prac and whether or not I could go into an area like sexual abuse for my prac,
Yeah.
and they basically said no, because
Really?
yeah, because We're too green.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, and um, it's too challenging. And I'm really fortunate enough to have he's actually the head of psychology now. He moved from the head of counselling to the head of psychology. I'm at Notre Dame, and he worked at SARC, which is the Sexual Abuse Resource Centre
Oh, yeah,
in WA.
yeah,
Yeah, he worked there for a really long time. So it's like somebody that I get to kind of speak to about that, which really feels I'm super grateful for.
yeah.
Um,
Someone that
yeah,
understands that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I've never got to have a conversation about lived experience or anything, but it just kind of it demonstrates to me that um, even when we're doing our prac, that we're just unprepared. And even when I've got my degree, and there has to be some kind of body of experience that builds up before we can sort of immerse ourselves into these kind of areas.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
That makes sense really
it
because
does.
of that secondary trauma and really wanting to be prepared
Yeah,
when helping facilitate someone through that healing. We want to really be prepared with that, otherwise we can do more damage. So that makes sense.
yeah. But then also recognizing that, if you're called to do it, then you'll find a way to get in there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. If you're ready,
Yeah,
there's the rules and then there's the universe saying you're ready, so let's do
yeah, yeah. There's the
it.
rules and then there's the bending of them. So,
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm so glad you're there and you've made it to uni. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah.
yeah.
If you may have already answered this, Susan, but I'm just wondering if you had to pick one key when it comes to truly healing from CSA, what would that be?
Um, a deep commitment to self to take it through to the end, regardless of how it feels, because it literally feels like hell when you're really in it. But if you've really committed to yourself to see it through, so it requires that deep commitment and a bucket of, 10 buckets of courage, um, to really face all of that. A deep love of self, for that sort of commitment and courage and everything comes from this um, deep desire to just really honor the self and the life that you've been given, and
Hmm.
to know that it's one experience. Yeah. So I feel like those were some real keys for my healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like it's possible for ones to thrive post CSA?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think that I would be, wanting to embark on the degree and head in the direction that I am if I didn't truly believe that.
Mm. Yeah. Good on you. Yeah, carving a path, really,
Yeah.
Susan. When you're just sharing that, it's like, you know, just trailblazing because again, sadly, so many people get lost in this and don't come back from it. And it's so understandable, just the complicated dynamics with this experience for the human psyche. It's understandable that some people don't come back from it. So again, a part of this conversation today is about instilling hope out there and that people can come through and can make something of it, turn a disaster into a blessing, if you want to put it that way. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I know there's some therapeutic approaches that talk about sort of making meaning out of um, the experiences that you've had, so which is exactly that, turning, having a choice in how we perceive these things. Um, you know, I caught this little catchphrase a couple of days ago for myself, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds like a really great title for a book." It was, but it's kind of like this journey, really. It's like from victimization to just to self determination,
Yeah.
and that's like the journey of this. Like
Yeah.
we can
Yeah,
go
that's
from being victims, yeah, to not.
yeah. It makes sense, and it's spoken about so much in all different healing modalities. Is although we don't have a choice with what happens to us, we do have a choice with how we're going to respond to it. And I guess
Yeah,
that's a big component in this experience as well. It's like, number one, it's not your fault.
yeah,
Let's get that really clear. If
yeah,
that's been layered in, it's not your fault. So let's really get clear on that. And then just coming to a place of and understanding that we have a choice to how are we going to respond, because this events happen, and this goes for all experiences and healing. This event's happened. Okay, it feels like this. How am I going to respond to it? And I'm fascinated all the time, Susan, with how people can go through very similar experiences and it will break some people, but it will make the other
yeah,
person, they'll really take it and run with it and learn from it and use it to be like, well, I know that I don't want to be like that. I want to be like this. And it will sink other people depending on their attitude and their makeup, really.
yeah, yeah. It's really interesting, isn't it? I wonder. Yeah, I don't have an answer to that really, but I don't think that you even expect one. But yeah, it's like what is it inside of us that keeps that flame alive of sacredness, knowing
Yeah.
that this human experience is a sacred one, and that um, nothing can really snuff that out
Yeah.
unless we allow it to.
Yeah, and don't believe the bullshit and the
Yeah,
narratives and the collective noise that says otherwise, because that's the perpetrator winning. It's
yeah,
like, yeah, I have tainted you and you can't come back from that. And, which I'm saying out loud because I've spoken to many people with this, that's what they feel like. They feel
yeah,
like I'm tainted. I'll never be pure again, so I can't make anything of my life. And, and again, a lot of people, we lose a lot of people to addiction and lots of sorts of things because of abuse. And I feel while we're talking about this, if we look at it occultly, it's one of sexual abuse, especially child sexual abuse, is one of the main strategies that those energies that want to keep human beings in separation and darkness will use, especially when it comes to light workers or people that have a great deal of potential to make a difference in the world. They will be targeted. Let's not kid around here. When we're looking at it from an occult point of view, that's what's happening. In many cases where bright ones are targeted to keep them asleep, to keep them or to get them into this wounding, because they know that someone that experiences this as a child, most won't ever activate and move into the wholeness and actualize their potential, um, because so much energy is taken up in the healing and all this sort of stuff. So within that, it's just great to have people like yourself that are like, fuck that, where, I'm going to use this to better myself and to educate others. And that's why I feel it's great to speak up about it, because it's like all things in healing. When we aren't looking at it, when we're avoiding and denying it, that's where it festers. And it's
yeah,
always seems bigger and darker than it actually is when we shine the light on it. And that's part of what we're doing here, is shining the light on it and saying it's okay, you can heal from it, get help, and remove some of those narratives and beliefs that are in the collective, which are a big part of the, if you want to call it the dark forces, whatever, those energies that seek to keep us in separation, and from lights really shining brightly, that's a lot of their noise. And coming through the ones that are perpetuating it as well, like that's where they are projecting that it's your fault and you'll never come back from this. Again, if that's installed from such a young age, it can stop people from from landing their potential. So just felt to touch on that, Susan, and because I think a lot of people out there, they either don't know that or they forget that. And I've spoken to people where they're like, oh my goodness, yeah, because they know that they're a light.
Yeah.
They know that they are a light. And this has happened. It's like, yeah, you've been targeted because you are a light. And
Yeah.
you could and you still can make a big difference. Don't let the bastards get you down, because then they actually win. And they've won. So it's like, no, yeah, this has happened to me, but I'm not going to let this break me. I'm going to feel all the feelings and do whatever it takes to stand up on my own feet, learn from it, cultivate compassion, wisdom, whatever it is, and make something of it, turn it into a blessing of some sort.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, because that is a significant component to this.
Yeah.
And for us to go in there and get our biggest blazing torches
Yep.
onto the collective shame
Yes.
that is this.
Yes.
And it is still so heavily shrouded, and there's so much taboo, like we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of all still part of it. It's like
Yeah.
this big matrix of, we don't talk about it, you're so filthy, you're disgusting, you're ashamed, you've got shame, just all of this narrative that happens, that's really kind of plugged in there from all of that dark matrix. And for us to just be aware that, yeah, okay, some of that is still going to be, we've chosen to continue on that
Yeah.
narrative. However, a large component of that isn't anything to do with us, and we can actually sort of, cut and clear from all of that.
Yep. Yep. Give it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're saying that, there's so much shame and getting the torch on that. It's such a key again to all healing, but um, specifically with this, because that's just again where it festers away. And like you said, it's when you really accepted that this happened, that's when the work began.
Yeah.
Until it's really accepted, okay, this happened, it'll never really be healed properly because it hasn't seen the light of day completely. So,
Yeah. And
encourage.
those,
You go.
sorry, Jay, um, just to throw in there that and those, forces that we talked about,
Yeah.
can grab hold of that doubt. And they
Yeah.
do grab hold of that.
That's
No, it
that.
never happened. No,
The
you're wrong.
whispers.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
until
you are
you go,
tainted.
no, it
Yeah.
definitely did,
Yeah.
and you claim it
Yeah.
back in some way. There's kind of a taking of power back there.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, I cut you off. My
No,
apologies.
perfect.
Yeah.
Glad you threw that in there. And again, you spoke of this self-awareness that's grown with your journey with the healing, and it's just so important to get to a place where we're very clear on what's ours and what's not. And
Yeah.
and that's a big part of it, because yeah, there are energies out there that don't want you to heal from it. Let's not beat around the bush about that. That's true. And so we need to get better at boundaries and energetic protection, and just cultivating an ever increasing amount of self-awareness so we know the truth, what's actually happening within and without, and then we can behave accordingly with what's going on
Yeah.
there. So yeah, great that that's come up. And I just, I'm just such a champion when you're sharing now, I'm like, when you're talking about the shame and bringing your torch, I'm like, yes, go girl. And anyone out there that's listening to this, just encouraging you to be courageous with this and know that darkness can't be where light is. That's full stop, end of story. And you are a light in essence. So bring that. And it's like, I use the example a lot with bullies. Most bullies are just hurt little kids, and if you stand up to them, they whittle away, and and it's the
Yeah.
same with this. You stand up and you look at the wounding. If you can face your trauma straight on, and you've spoken of how much courage is needed and how that was just bit by bit of staying right, 30 seconds, a minute, reparenting, but whatever it takes. And the more that you're doing that, the more you're just cracking open this wound and getting the love and consciousness in there, and the light in there, which is the healing and a journey, and everyone's own unique personal journey with this. Yet just want to put out there again that darkness can't be where light is. So you bring that and bring your courage, and that's how we can champion each other through these difficult experiences that we've had on planet Earth. And we're always stronger together as well with that. So support is just so key. So good on you, Susan. I'm glad you brought that whole light and the shame thing, because when you're just like, oh, when I've worked with and just friends and just being in this industry, seeing ones that are caught up in the shame of it, it's like, it's
Yeah.
not your fault. Fucking stop it. It's not your
Yeah.
fault. And just clairvoyantly, and just with some things I have on board, I'm like, that's not even yours. It's not even you. You can release that. You can return that. You don't need to keep perpetuating that, because that's come from someone else because of an experience you've had. And it's just, yeah, it's sad to see a lot of people getting caught up in that, in the shame, and thinking it's them. And it's like, hang on a minute, you're a kid. That
Yeah.
shouldn't have happened. And so um yeah, there's so many qualities that can be born out of an experience like this, depending on your attitude and how you choose to respond to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And just paving the way and demonstrating, I know that there are others out there that, have publicly um, demonstrated their healing and shown where they're at with
Yeah,
it now. And
yeah,
there are others.
yeah,
And yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
yeah. There's been some people coming out with horrendous stories that are
Yeah.
publicly now, speaking out on it, and that, and I think that's really hopeful through such a
Yeah.
horrendous thing. But it's hopeful, because yeah, if they can do it, then maybe I can as well.
Yeah. Anything's possible, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you found peace with it?
Um, Probably, yeah. Um, yeah. The peace was in the acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, because the constant grappling, like, did it not, or did it, the constant gaslighting self.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and there's this moment where everything just relaxes. It's like, oh, yeah, okay.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's like this relief almost.
Yeah.
And I suppose in the relief, then over time that sort of develops into more of a peace.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can relate to acceptance feeling like a relief for sure. So,
yeah,
yeah, it's just like this surrendered, like, putting all this energy into, like, did it happen or didn't? It's just like, okay, it
yeah,
happened. Now we just can, you know,
yeah,
create a map to move forward from it.
yeah. I think a lot of the time I know for me, and I'm pretty sure this is the case for others, like what is it going to look like on the other side with the perpetrator, and having
Yeah.
expectations of, oh, that means X, Y, and Z, or that means, A, B, and C, or, and we have to let go of all of that, all of it, because we have no idea what it's going to look like at the end. What could be right for somebody to disconnect may not be right for somebody else. It's like we just have to let go of all the expectations of, and it almost feels like they're just more stories that we can get caught up in the reasons why not to face into
Just
this stuff.
to stop you from, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And that's you're talking about there, if the perpetrator is still in your life, like how are you going to
yes,
deal with that? Yeah, sure.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, when you're talking there, I was just seeing this vision, which is it's talked about a lot in this in personal development, is driving at night. You can only see 200 meters ahead of you, and that's all you need to see. So just
yes,
deal with that. Be present. Deal with the
exactly.
200 meters. Deal with
Yeah,
the moment, and then the next part of the road will shine up. Be
yeah,
when
yeah.
you get there. Yeah.
Yeah, because that moment's probably enough, right? It's like there'll definitely
Yeah.
be enough there in that
Es-
moment. Like, why do you
Especially
want to
with this.
perpetuate?
Yeah. Let's just deal with this 200 meters. It's a
Yeah.
pretty full 200 meters. Like we don't want to deal with 400 meters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah,
yeah.
we got your courage on, but small bite-sized pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I also heard myself say maps before when I was saying mapping a route out of the healing.
You did, yeah. Yeah.
Did you want to share on anything about that in complete non-judgment and equanimity?
Yeah, that's pretty difficult.
So the MAPS movement I'm talking about for people watching this, which is minor attracted persons, which is something
Yeah.
that's grown over the last, I don't know, it hasn't been that long, maybe 18 months or something, maybe more, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously, having access to some scholarly material through
Mm.
university, I did sort of have a little investigation of it.
Ah, okay. What have
Um,
you got to say about it?
uh, it just feels wrong.
Hmm.
Basically, so I read that a particular scholarly article, probably more than one, say defined MAPS or minor attracted persons as an oppressed sexual minority group who are subject to stigmatization and discrimination.
I'm finding it very difficult to not say anything out loud about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I have heard that somewhere before. Yeah, that description.
And yeah, and that MAPS or MAP, the term MAP was created due to the um, connotations that the word paedophile has.
Right. Okay, so they're the definitions. Do you have anything that, well, you shared, it feels wrong.
Yeah, it feels wrong. Um, and there was some, it was challenging for me to read that stuff actually. Um, and they define that because they talk about maps as not necessarily moving into paedophilia, because some of them keep their desires under wraps.
So it's not actualized, their desires is not played out. So that's,
Yes.
oh, so maps is more someone that isn't actively engaged in playing out their desires.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Um, yeah. And well, that's kind of my understanding of what I was reading. But it totally dismisses the whole energetic component, which is what we were talking about, because even if you're an adult and you're having sexual thoughts towards your child or a child, that can have the same kind of wounding than if the act was actually taking place as well. So yeah, I find it really difficult, and I guess because science doesn't really want to acknowledge the whole sort of energetic component, but there definitely is that component that needs to be considered. Just because they're thinking about it, thoughts are powerful, as we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do actually create something somewhere, on the astral or whatever. So it is playing out somewhere, somehow.
Absolutely, Susan. It
Yeah.
most certainly has an impact on the target of those thoughts, undoubtedly. And yeah, the impact might not be as deep and whatever as the actual experience, but most certainly the similar. It can be very, very similar because, like you said, energy is or thoughts are powerful, and most certainly that has an impact for sure. Yes,
Yeah.
interesting world that we live in.
Yeah, and I guess I was sort of, looking at the statistics of, them going out and talking to people about what the term pedophilia actually means. So going out into the community, and most of them used violence, somewhere in their definition, or some form of violence. Might not have been the word exactly, but it was like a connotation of violence. And I just feel to share, just through watching videos of survivors, and that's actually not necessarily the truth at the time for the person that's going through it, just because of that distortion with love, and things start to all get murky there. Some victims genuinely believe in those moments that they are being loved.
Yeah.
They aren't, of course,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's as we've mentioned it before, it's so messy, and it's so
Distorted.
nuanced, and convoluted. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many, I guess there's so many different experiences that people have from the CSA. Everybody would be different. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of overlap as well. But just everybody would have their own unique experience of that, and their journey out of that back to themselves would be unique as well. Yeah. We're kind of getting to the end, Miss Susan. I'm wondering, do you have any regrets? And I'm gonna throw a second question in there on top of that, is would you do anything differently with knowing what you know now as well?
Do I have any regrets? Probably not. Um, um, yeah, I had to kind of really consider that one. Um, It's hard to, yeah, because all this experience has kind of led me to this moment and this version of Susan,
Mm-hmm.
which, is there really any point in having any regret for that? Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, seems
Um,
wise.
yeah, and surely there are moments that I could have done better, and perhaps, in those earlier years in the 20s, maybe, this version of Susan can kind of send that information back through the timeline
Yeah,
now, that,
yeah.
actually, these are the places that you need to go and seek help from.
Hmm.
Um, Rather than, waiting now, this time, this could actually be dealt with and healed. earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there wouldn't have been so many abusive situations that needed to have been had, or not even needed to. Maybe they just wouldn't even be a part of the experience.
Yeah.
But I also recognise that, she did her best with what she had at hand.
Yeah. Yeah, nice one.
Mm.
Would you have, well, do you have anything that you would like to share with those ones out there who are healing from CSA, whether they're just starting out or wherever they're at with it? Have you got anything you'd like to share with ones dealing with this situation?
Yeah, I think it's just something really simple, which is, I see you and I feel you, and you can do this.
Yeah. Lovely, Susan. I think that in itself, coming from an authentic place, can just be the catalyst for so much healing. What you just shared there, just really heartfelt. I see you and I got you and it's okay and you can do this. Just awesome. Yeah. I've got a couple of questions that I ask people at the end of every podcast, but before I do that, is there anything else you just want to share about your journey, about the healing? Is there anything that else you want to leave it all here in the ring, as I would say?
Yeah, I kind of feel like we went off in all the directions. We
Yeah,
went all the
covered a
way out to
lot.
the cosmos in my picture there, and all the way back.
Yeah, yeah, covered a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you feel like you've shared everything that's on your heart
Uh,
with this?
yeah. And to just, I guess, to just reach out and, I know that Jay's going to put Claire's contact details. I don't know where she's at with taking new patients, and it doesn't really matter. I guess if the thing is right, then it will always be the case. But to always just reach out, and support is there, and
Yeah.
we all can collectively begin to work on this and remove all the shrouding,
Mhm.
remove all the veils that and all the taboos, and take all the power and the steam out of that, and go, it's just another experience and we can heal from this too.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah, indeed. Find your person because there will be a person or a
Yeah.
group of persons out there that are perfect for you with this journey.
Yeah.
Nice one. Thank you very much,
Thank
Susan.
you.
Now, I've got two questions I'm going to ask you, which I ask everyone that
Yeah.
that's on the show, like I said. First one is, if you could only remember one thing from this life because everything else was erased, one lesson, one learning, something that you can take with you, what would it be?
That no matter what, I am always worthy and I'm always loved, regardless of the experiences that I've had and regardless of what other people say and do. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's awesome. Nice. And the lucky last is if you could say something to every human being in real time right now on the planet and they would just deeply hear what you said, what would that be?
It's that you are not separate. You are not separate from each other, that we are not separate from the earth, we're not separate from the cosmos, and we're not separate from the love that breathes life into all things.
Yeah, I don't need to add to that. Thank you. Very, very nice. That feels like a wrap, Miss Susan. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here. And yeah, heavy subject, but a heartfelt chat. I feel tonight helpful and a lot of wonderful things you shared, which I do hope are of value to those watching this. So thank you very much. My name is Jay. This is Conscious Conversations with Jay. Lots of love, stay bright, and let's change this planet.
Thank you.